So, 1947. It was supposed to be a brand new dawn for India. But according to Chapter 8 of the Uprooted Chinar, for one of Kashmir's oldest communities, it was actually the start of a deep, deep crisis. Today, we're going to dive into how a moment filled with so much promise became, as the book puts it, a heartbreaking reversal.
You see, for the pundits, Kashmir's ancient Hindu inhabitants, 1947 was meant to be a renewal. After centuries of foreign rule, independence felt like a chance for their indigenous roots, beautifully symbolized by this iconic chinar tree, to finally flourish again in their own homeland.
But, that hope? It crashed headfirst into a brutal new reality. The book we're exploring frames this whole period around that one tragic idea, the massive gap between the promise of a new beginning and what it calls a heartbreaking reversal for the pundit community. So the big question is, how did everything go so wrong? How did that promise just flip on its head? To get it, we really have to look at the political and demographic shifts that started shaking up the valley right after independence. And to really understand what happened, the book zooms in on two key players. You've got Sheikh Abdullah, the hugely influential Lion of Kashmir, and of course Jawaharlal Nehru, India's first prime minister. The author basically argues their relationship, this really complex political dance, is what would end up sealing Kashmir's fate. And boy, did it all come to a head in 1947. Kashmir's ruler at the time, Maharaja Hari Singh, he had this dream of an independent Kashmir, a sort of Switzerland of the East, separate from both India and Pakistan. But that dream was shattered almost instantly by a crisis he just couldn't control. I mean, just look at how fast this all went down. In August, the Maharaja signs these standstill agreements, trying to buy some time. But then, boom, just 2 months later, on October 22nd, tribal invaders backed by Pakistan flood into Kashmir. The state is about to collapse, and just 4 days later, a desperate Hari Singh signs the Instrument of Accession, officially joining India. And literally the very next day, October 27th, came this incredible, dramatic airlift of Indian troops straight into Srinagar. They landed just in the nick of time, stopping the invaders just miles outside the city. According to the book, this single military action was what saved the valley for India. Absolutely pivotal. But then came a move that the book just does not hold back on. Just as the Indian army was pushing back the invaders and gaining ground, Prime Minister Nehru decided to call for a UN-brokered ceasefire. Instead of pushing for a clear victory, he took the whole issue to the world stage. The book doesn't pull any punches. It calls this a total failure of leadership. And this right here is the central question that hangs over everything that followed. Was Nehru's decision a principled, moral stand for peace, or was it a colossal strategic blunder, one with consequences that are still being felt today? And the book's argument here is chilling. It draws a straight line from that ceasefire decision to the modern era. It argues that by leaving a third of Kashmir under Pakistani control, it created a permanent safe haven, a launchpad for decades of terror attacks against India. The author points to a whole list of tragedies, from the 2008 Mumbai attacks all the way to the Pulwama bombing in 2019. So while that external conflict was basically frozen in place by the ceasefire, a whole different kind of struggle was just beginning inside the valley. The book goes into detail on how a series of land reforms and new laws began to uproot the Pandit community, not from the outside, but from within. Okay, so the first big move was this thing called the Big Landed Estates Abolition Act of 1950. Now, on the surface, it looked like a standard land reform. It put a cap on how much land any one person could own and gave the extra to the tenants who were farming it. And in Kashmir, what that really meant was land going from Pandit owners to their Muslim tenants. But here's the kicker, the crucial detail the book really zeroes in on. Unlike similar reforms happening elsewhere in India, the compensation paid to these landowners was zero, zilch, nothing. The author argues this one policy, in a single moment, just shattered the economic foundation of countless Pandit families. And then, on top of that economic hit, you had these two really unique constitutional articles, 370 and 350A. Together, they basically gave Jammu and Kashmir its own special status. And, most importantly, the power to decide who was a permanent resident and who wasn't. And this slide just perfectly shows the weird one-way street it created. Think about it. A Kashmiri could buy property anywhere else in India, no problem. But another Indian citizen from, say, Delhi or Mumbai was legally blocked from owning property in Kashmir. It just wasn't allowed. So imagine you're a pundit who was forced to leave. What did this mean for you? Well, the book argues it was devastating. It meant if you left, you could lose your residency status. You weren't just losing your home, you were legally barred from ever being able to come back and reclaim it.
Okay, so you've got the economic pressure, you've got the legal walls going up. But according to the book, another war was being fought at the exact same time, a war for the story of Kashmir itself. It alleges a deliberate campaign to rewrite the history of who actually belonged there.
The author claims that propaganda started to systematically repaint the picture of the pundit community. Suddenly, they weren't the original people of the valley anymore. No, the narrative being pushed was that they were outsiders, Indian agents, or collaborators with the old Dogra rulers.
And this is the central, bitter irony that the book just keeps coming back to. The Pandits, the actual indigenous people with roots going back thousands of years, were now being labeled as colonizers in their own ancestral land. It was, as the book describes it, a complete inversion of history. So all of this history, all this pressure, it's all building up to the biggest political earthquake in Kashmir's recent memory, the 2019 decision to get rid of Article 370. The book frames this as a moment that's just packed with both new hope and incredible uncertainty. So on August 5th, 2019, the Indian government did the unthinkable. It revoked those special articles. In a single stroke, the laws that had defined Kashmir's autonomy for 70 years, they were just gone, vanished overnight. But what happened next? Well, according to the book, it's a total paradox. On the one hand, there's this huge sense of hope. The legal barriers are finally down, but the reality on the ground, it's a lot tougher. Resettlement is moving at a snail's pace, targeted killings are still happening, and in a cruel twist, many pundits are now simply priced out of buying back land in their own ancestral home.
And this all leads to the book's final and pretty heartbreaking assessment of where things stand today. It says that after everything, the tragic reality is that pundits are welcome to come back to Kashmir, but only as tourists.
And so, all of this leaves us with one huge, lingering question. After all the politics, the pain, and the displacement, can the deep, ancient roots of the Chinar tree, of this uprooted community, ever truly find their way back home?